What began as a luxurious Christmas party at Tyler Perry's private estate suddenly turned into a moment so powerful, so raw, that conversations stopped, smiles faded, and grown men stood frozen in silence. There was no stage, no spotlight, no plan to perform, but the second Fantasia Barrino and Le'Andria Johnson opened their mouths and sang "Lose to Win," the entire atmosphere shifted. This wasn't entertainment. This was pain, faith, and redemption colliding in real time. There were no cameras rolling for content, no performance slot on the schedule, no announcement that two of gospel music's most emotionally powerful voices were about to take over the room. Fantasia Barrino and Le'Andria Johnson didn't arrive at Tyler Perry's Christmas party intending to sing at all, but sometimes the most unforgettable moments don't come from preparation. They come from pressure, memory, and emotion rising all at once. What makes this moment so shocking isn't just the vocals. It's why the song "Lose to Win" hits so hard in that room. Who was listening, and what those lyrics meant to people who rarely show their brokenness in public. Because this wasn't just a Christmas party anymore. This became a reminder that even at the top, everyone in that room had lost something to win something else. This isn't a red carpet event. There are no flashing cameras or reporters waiting outside the gates. It's an invite-only space where some of the most influential names in entertainment finally get to exhale. Actors, producers, gospel legends, industry power players, people who spend most of their lives being watched suddenly get to be human. That night, the estate glowed with warmth. Christmas lights lined the pathways. Soft music played through hidden speakers. Laughter echoed from different corners of the room as guests exchanged hugs, inside jokes, and quiet reflections about the year they had survived. Because for many of them, survival was the right word. This had been a year of losses, careers shaken, families tested, faith questioned, and yet here they were, dressed in elegance, smiling for each other, holding glasses filled with celebration while carrying burdens no one else could see. Fantasia arrived without fanfare, no entourage, no announcement, just a quiet presence, familiar, respected, and deeply understood by those who knew her journey. She blended into the room like someone who didn't need to prove anything anymore. Le'Andria Johnson followed later, her energy unmistakable, but contained. Those who recognized her exchanged knowing glances, not because they expected a performance, but because they knew her spirit was unpredictable in the best and most uncomfortable ways. This was not a night for singing. There was no stage, no microphone, no program, and that's exactly why what happened next caught everyone off guard. Because somewhere between casual conversation and Christmas cheer, something shifted, a feeling, a heaviness, almost like the room itself was holding its breath. And then someone spoke, 4 simple words that changed everything. Sing something real. What happened next was not planned, and once the first note was released, there was no stopping it. When Fantasia Barrino and Le'Andria Johnson sing, people don't just hear vocals, they hear survival. These are not artists who learned emotion in a studio or polished pain for applause. Their voices were shaped in moments when silence felt heavier than sound, and faith was the only thing left to hold on to. Fantasia's journey has been lived in public view, from her rise on American Idol to the crushing weight of sudden fame. She has never hidden the truth about her struggles. Depression, heartbreak, single motherhood in moments when she questioned whether she even wanted to continue living. All of it became part of her testimony. Over time, her voice stopped sounding like a performance and started sounding like a prayer. When Fantasia sings, it's not about perfection, it's about honesty. Le'Andria Johnson's story carries a different kind of fire. Her voice is raw, unfiltered, and sometimes uncomfortable because it comes from wrestling with faith rather than presenting it neatly. Her life has been marked by public missteps, harsh criticism, and a constant tug-of-war between calling and conflict. But through every fall, her gift remained undeniable. She sings like someone who knows what it feels like to disappoint people, disappoint herself, and still believe God hasn't walked away. Together, they represent something rare in gospel music, not just talent, but truth. They don't sanitize struggle. They don't pretend the road was easy. Their voices crack because their stories cracked first. That's why in that room, full of polished success and carefully guarded images, their presence alone carried weight. Before a single lyric was sung, people already knew this wouldn't be light entertainment. It couldn't be. Too much history stood between those two women and that moment. And when the song that came to their hearts was Lose to Win, it wasn't random, it was personal. Because that song isn't about defeat, it's about surrender. About losing pride, losing control, losing the version of yourself you thought you had to be in order to become who you were always meant to be. And once the first word left Fantasia's lips, there was no turning back. The room didn't know it yet, but it was about to be completely undone. No announcement was made. No one tapped a microphone or asked for attention. It happened quietly, almost accidentally, the kind of moment you only recognize as historic after it has already passed. Fantasia didn't stand in the center of the room. She didn't ask for space. She simply inhaled, closed her eyes, and let the first note fall into the air like a confession. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was steady, controlled, and heavy with meaning. Within seconds, the room reacted. Conversations faded mid-sentence. People turned their bodies without realizing it. Laughter dissolved into stillness. Even those who didn't immediately recognize the song felt the shift, that unmistakable feeling when something sacred interrupts something social. Then came the words. Sometimes you have to lose to win again. The lyric didn't sound rehearsed, it sounded lived in, like it had been carried for years, waiting for the right moment to be released. Fantasia's voice didn't soar, it settled, wrapping around the room and pressing against every person's chest. Le'Andria stood a few steps away, listening. You could see it in her face before you heard it in her voice. The memories rising, the emotions pulling at her breath. When she joined in, her tone was rougher, deeper, trembling at the edges, not from nerves, but from recognition. She wasn't singing harmony, she was answering a call. The sound of two voices, one smooth and restrained, the other raw and aching, created something electric. It felt less like a duet and more like a conversation between two women who had both lost, fallen, stood back up, and kept going. Anyway, phone slowly came out, not with excitement, but with reverence. People weren't recording for clout. They were recording because they knew they might never experience this exact moment again. Across the room, faces changed, eyes glistened, heads bowed. Some people clasped their hands together as if instinctively reaching for comfort. Tyler Perry himself reportedly stood motionless, visibly emotional, absorbing every word as if it were being sung directly to him. This wasn't background music anymore. This was testimony unfolding in real time. And just when the room thought it had reached its emotional peak, Fantasia made a subtle shift, a pause, a breath, a slight change in tone. That pause said everything. There are songs that sound beautiful, and then there are songs that expose people. Lose to Win belongs to the second category. It doesn't entertain the listeners, it confronts them. And in that room filled with influence, success, and carefully protected images, the song landed like a mirror no one expected to face. The message is simple on the surface, but devastating in its truth. Before growth comes surrender. Before elevation comes humiliation. Before purpose reveals itself, something familiar has to be released. That message doesn't just resonate with people who are struggling, it shakes people who appear to have already made it. Every person in that room had lost something to get where they were. A relationship, a dream, a version of themselves they can never return to. And while the world sees the success, it rarely sees the grief that came with it. As Fantasia sang those lyrics, it was impossible not to think about her own life, the moments she has openly shared where losing almost destroyed her, yet somehow redirected her. The song wasn't metaphorical for her, it was autobiographical. And when Le'Andria followed each line with her own raw delivery, the message doubled in weight. Her voice carried the sound of someone who had lost publicly, fallen loudly, and still chose to stand back up in faith. In that moment, she wasn't defending her past or explaining her journey.